Welcome to the Swing Trading with Cycles channel. We're going to do a review of Dixie tonight, but we have something a little bit special. So it's October 27th, and we're going to start looking at the actual currencies, the forex pairs that trade within the Dixie. So the 6 currencies that make up the Dixie. So those are the euro, the Japanese yen, the British pound, Canadian dollar, Swedish krona, and the Swiss franc. Those last 3 are like really small in terms of weight, like the Canadian dollar, Swedish krona, and the Swiss franc, and really the pound sterling as well. That's only 12%. The monster is the euro. That's at almost 60%. And then you have the Japanese yen at almost 14%. So it really is a euro plus Japanese yen show, but you still have all these other guys in the mix, so it makes it a little bit more complex. So we're going to review that, kind of get a sense, if those things are bullish, then that's going to make the Dixie bearish, vice versa. We've got some really exciting, big picture charts, like annual charts that we're going to look at. So let's go through it. So we'll just go through the Dixie really quickly. So we're starting day 18 right now. We're actually trying to make a swing low. That would make this a swing low and actually a false breakdown, because you can see we made a low below. And again, today is Thursday night. So you can see we made a low below Wednesday's candle today. And now we're trying to open above the high, or we're trying to get above the high that marked for the Thursday candle, which would give us a swing low. That could easily reverse. We have a lot of trading to go. And again, we have this little double top situation here, day 7 and day 13, which we talked about in the previous video. Definitely take a look at that. Take a look at the link in the description. I'm not going to go too heavy into the Dixie itself. Again, we're going to use this video primarily to talk about those 6 other currencies. And really we'll focus on the top 3 or 4 because, again, we know some of them have really, really small weights. Like the Swiss franc has a weight of 3.6%. And the Swedish krona has a weight of 4.2%, right? So those two combined are like, just a little bit under 8%. So you got to take it all in context. And on the weekly chart, what's building here is a lower wick, right? So that's interesting. We got down to 109.535, and the low from this is 109. Wait a second. No, that's too much of a coincidence. So the low here is for this, and which I've been talking about, this big weekly candle that's been kind of holding up the rally. The low for this weekly candle was 109.355, which is what this line is meant to mark. And our low so far here was 109.535. Right, so we actually did not quite make a lower low, but got really close. But I mean, either way, we got right to that zone, right? Which is the zone that you would expect to kind of be tested. So that's your Dixie, and again, really just an inside month right now. And we're gonna really kind of focus on the bigger picture charts when we look at the other, the other currencies. So let's flip to those. Let's start with the euro. We know that's the biggest weight. And notice, I'll just to orient you, the lower left-hand corner here is an annual chart, right? Meaning each candle is an entire year of price action. Upper left here is your daily. That's your weekly on the upper right. And then you have your monthly on the upper left. So noticing the annual chart, just like what should be clear to your eyes is that it is in more or less an uptrend, right? From this 1972 level, the 1972 period, all the way here, like it is moving up. I mean, right now it's kind of curling over, and like we'll zoom in here now. So we'll start with the yearly charts again, big picture. What kind of trend are we seeing is what we want to examine here, right? And this is really exciting, folks. So this is a massive breakdown. Right, I'll just draw arrows just so that it's clear for everybody. That is a swing high on the yearly level, right? That was obviously a swing high. That was a swing high. This was a swing high. This was a swing high. This was actually also a swing high, right? And there were other swing highs. I'm not marking every single one here, but like, notice what has just happened here, right? So actually, did we make the high on this? So this is 2020, the COVID year. The high was 1.23. This is 1.23495. So we did make a new high in 2021. So like, we talk about these patterns all the time. They're way more significant when they happen on an annual chart, on a chart where each candle is 1 year. It's one thing where a candle is a week or a week or even a month, but this is an entire year. Now, obviously, this candle hasn't finished closing yet. We still have the rest of the year. We still have another we have about 2 months left, right? And we're going to zoom in for sure. But this pattern here is not auspicious, because when we make swing highs on an annual candle, similar to swing highs on a lower time frame candle, you tend to see downside follow through, right? Like, and at the very least, you're certainly at risk of it, right? And so if you're respecting risk, you're really paying attention, right? Like, when you broke below this low here on this year, right? So we didn't do that this year. This is just an example, right? This is 1995, this candle, your swing high. We consolidated for an entire year, all of 1996, and then wham. And then this year kind of duped people, consolidated again, was green, and then you got the real sort of, you go for the jugular, 3 red years in a row. And then you have this rally, and then you have this other swing high. And so, like, that doesn't mean this swing high has to be something like that, but it's certainly a risk, and that is very, very dangerous, right? The other thing that I would kind of call out here is this level area of pivots. I mean, that almost seems unthinkable, right? For the euro to go down to like 83 cents to a dollar, but it seems very possible, right? So that's the big picture, right? I mean, look at these massive moves lower. And obviously, there were things that happened during that time. There's always a fundamental catalyst. That's how it works. I'm not saying we have to get a precipitous decline like this, or even like that, or even like that, but this is not great. Not to mention, this whole thing is essentially a bear flag of this move, if you really think about it. And like, if you really think about it, this is a bear flag that, like, this is the spillover of this bear flag. Not good. And so if you think about that, that suggests long-term strength for the Dixie, right? Or at least call it 58% long-term strength, because this 58% of this thing makes up the Dixie. So if this thing is going to continue to decline and is maybe seeking out this level right here, that would imply that the Dixie has some wind at its back. But of course, there are other currencies within the basket that we have to look at. Before we do that, we'll just kind of look at the euro. You can see that wick on the yearly chart is caused by this swing low here, right? So that is most likely a weekly cycle low there, right? Notice how far below the 200-week moving average we are. We can't, I mean, it seems unlikely at this point that this weekly cycle rally would get us to that 200-week moving average. We did just cross above the 10. And let's see, let's get, what about the 50-week, right? So you can see the 50-week moving average is still sloping down pretty aggressively. These are just, when something is in this far of a downtrend, the moving averages can be useful just like visual aids, if nothing else. But look at how these rallies have gotten stamped out. I hope you're seeing this now. It should be kind of really sticking out to you. That was a little rally that got snuffed out. That was a little rally that got snuffed out. Little rally that got snuffed out. Little rally. Like, this is like a textbook downtrend, right? Like, boom, 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 boom. We're just like, it's just, so it's like, how far do we go? Like maybe up here, right? You could even see something like that, and then we continue, like some kind of complex one. But that doesn't look great. That's your weekly. And your monthly chart, see, now this is interesting. This is a green inside month. And we should start with the monthly. the higher the time frame, the more important the signal, right? We kind of just talked about that. So this is a green inside month so far, but now it's starting to get into doji land a little bit. But if we are in a new weekly cycle, if we go back to that, this would be week 4. So that's not amazing either, because you could easily see a world where this weekly cycle tops out on week 4. I mean, wow, like look at the slope of this decline. I mean, if nothing else, this is just your mirror image of that, the slope of the rise in Dixie, if nothing else, right? We kind of sliced through the 200 week moving average. That's the yellow line here. We had this little feeble rally, touched it, and then just collapsed lower. So this thing looks like it's about to roll over soon if you think about the length of these rallies. Now, at the same time, because these rallies have got snuffed out by so much, maybe there's a little bit more traction. If you think about the monthly, do we escape the month green, and then October being the month I'm talking about, and then November, we get the downside kind of resumption? Like, that's what this is kind of setting up for. I mean, if you think about it, you see this green month of May kind of interspersed here. This is such a crazy long decline. I've been talking about the same thing with the gold chart. Things can't just go down in a straight line. And so this kind of green month is important. Like that's your lower high. That's your retracement. Like, you need that in a downtrend. So all of this is pointing to pronounced weakness for the euro, which implies strength for the Dixie, if nothing else. And on the daily chart, you can see, let's think about this daily cycle. How long are we in? Like, so we're probably getting a little bit long in the tooth, right? So this is day 21 of the daily cycle, right? That's an important thing to understand, right? If you identify a weekly cycle low, then by definition, you're also identifying a daily cycle low, because every cycle low is a corresponding lower time frame cycle low, right? So like a 3-year cycle low is also a weekly cycle low, and is also a daily cycle low, etc. So this thing is on day 21, so getting a little bit long in the tooth, right? This last rally before the swing high lasted 20 days. Well, this made a lower low. That wasn't really a rally. What about this one? Just giving us a sense, like, how long do these things kind of last? I mean, that was 12 days. That was 10 days. That was 19 days. So, and this is just to get a sense of, like, when we do get an inevitable bounce, how long does it last? And you can see we've already been going for quite some time. I mean, you can argue we had this bounce that got stamped out and then another one, but really what you see here is a higher low, right? I mean, this isn't healthy. Like, this kind of big downdraft, you wouldn't really expect in a strong uptrend, but we recovered, we held this higher low, and we've kept moving higher. And so, again, maybe we get a weekly cycle that has an advance for like 7-8 weeks, because we're now on week 4. That's what we're going to be watching for. So that's the euro. I spent the most time on that because that literally has the most sort of weight, like literally. So, but important to note that long term, it is still more or less like bigger picture. It's still kind of in this like uptrend-ish thing, but it's starting to break down. So it's kind of early in the breakdown. So now we'll move on to the Japanese yen. And it's the same kind of thing here, where this is a pretty clear uptrend. This is a yearly chart. This goes back to 1986. And you can see this is an uptrend, right? Like from 1986 to the big swing high in 2011, right? That's the one that has really started a big decline. And I'm just drawing a few swing highs here, like the really big ones. Oh, well, I mean, that's a big one. That's important. So that was, this big swing high was important. That was 1995. Notice the euro had a big swing high in 1995 as well. That's no coincidence. And I mean, this one was really ugly. I mean, look at this big, long upper wick. My God, people got smoked in here. Yikes. And then we had this decline here, came up, kind of a double top, lower high type deal, but didn't make a lower low, right? That's important, right? It actually held that level, which we just sliced through earlier this year, right? Like instead of coming down and testing this, it just sliced through it. And now, big coincidence, we're actually at that big low from 1998, right? Where we kind of reversed for a couple years. Like right now, we actually have fallen below that, but we're now slightly above it, kind of flirting with that level. And so this is important. So we then had a nice little uptrend since we held this higher low here. So this higher low came in 2002. And then what is this? That's another higher low. That's right, folks, right? This is another higher low. So we started a little uptrend on the yearly chart that was kind of smooth sailing. And then we had a big swing high in 2011. Next year, we made a low below, like we christened it the following year. And you notice that's something that you'll notice. The swing high doesn't always come the very next year. That's why you have to always be zooming out from the chart, taking a look, trying to understand what might be developing here kind of long term. Again, that's my style. I want to take position trades, swing trades that are long term. Like I can expect a rally for many, many months or a decline for many, many months, kind of get early there, right? So we got that big decline. And then we made a bottom like doji type situation in 2015. And then notice these little green candles in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now, mind you, all of these 4 years are all inside the range of this really ugly year, which was 2016. That's important to understand. I hope you like from watching the other videos, I hope you get that, right? Like these 4 candles, 4 years were all inside candles, inside this range, right? We had this candle that was very green at one point. How do we know that? We know that because it opened here, and at one point it was all the way up here. We know that because of this wick. This wick is a signature that tells us where price was, tells us the body of the candle was up here at one point. It was big and green. And then we just lost all of it. But we didn't go red, right? We were able to hold on. And then we actually had green years the following years, but we just didn't make much progress, which I guess isn't, I mean, if this is a currency after all, so like you're not necessarily expecting huge moves per se. And then if you look, we just sort of fell off a cliff after this swing high in 2020 from the COVID low. And this 2022 move is actually just a continuation, right? And you now wonder, we've already taken out this pivot from a long time ago. It would seem that the next one that's on the menu is down here, right? But let's see, on lower time frames, we might be getting a little bit of a rally. But notice this thing is just, I mean, you could also like, this is just a bear flag that is now like, this is the spillover of this bear flag. And it's probably not over with this candle from 2022, right? We probably get some continuation in 2023. Maybe that's what takes us to this pivot. You know, maybe we make all-time lows, you know, before this is over. Because if you think about that, as I talk about in the Dixie videos, the Dixie is moving towards a 3-year cycle high. So that's what may happen in the process of this, right? As the Dixie moves to 120, these things trend towards their all-time lows, more or less. And that's your yearly chart. And so notice the euro was working on 4 weeks off that swing low. This is just week 1 off of this swing low. So this is a potential weekly cycle low, right? So that would mean that the euro had a weekly cycle low 4 weeks ago, and this is just trying to catch up. Now the yen has been much weaker just in general, so that makes sense. These are other little attempts to rally, kind of similar, like I pointed out in the euro chart. This thing is just really, really weak, which tells you Dixie is really, really strong. And not to confuse, but, you know, you can trade these pairs the other way around as well, right? Like USD to JPY, which is actually what most people follow. I'll just flip over to that. And again, I don't want to confuse that. In that case, when that is when that is going higher, it's bullish for the dollar, right? And in this case, like you can just kind of look, again, not to confuse, this is just the inverse. Again, but this is still looking at the Japanese yen. Again, so as this thing goes higher, the Japanese yen goes lower. And you can see like it's literally just the mirror opposite. Whereas that was a bear flag for all those years, here was a little bull flag, more or less, that just has like broken out, right? And so you expect like a reverse symmetry move. I mean, wow. I don't know, 260. There was a time, and you notice this line was here. I drew this a long time ago, and you can see I actually had a little alarm to go through. Like that was an important level, right? We got through one. We like just sliced through 125, and it look like from the looks of this candle, it makes it look like we just never even looked back. Of course, we did, but this is just a massive downtrend that is now reversing higher, right? And we've already taken out this stuff. And so, yeah, it seems kind of crazy, but this getting the 266, again, this is all correlated with the idea of Dixie getting the 120. But when you look at this, it's just like, wow, yeah, this is probably not the end of the move, right? Like after 4 years of a bull flag, we're probably going to get a little bit more of a breakout than that, right? Which again, is very bullish for the Dixie. And you can see, you know, this thing might be topping here, right? Like a very, you know, wiki monthly candle. So that's the Japanese yen, and then we'll move on to the pound. We heard about this one, fell, you know, got to almost to parity with the dollar. You can see down to 103. Since then, this is your daily chart. We've been in a nice little uptrend. But what do we look like on the yearly, right? That's what we always start with. I think that's a good rule of thumb. So big picture, I hope you can see it clearly with your eyes. This thing has been in a downtrend since this chart started in 1972, right? How do we know that? Well, because of these series of swing highs, right? Like this swing high. So that's a low, that's a high that's lower than this one, right? We had this low, and then we had a high. It was a lower high. This is another swing high. That's another swing high. That's another one. And that's one. Yikes. So again, all really triangulating towards the same picture. In this case, we've already kind of pressed all-time lows. And it's funny. It's like, it's not like all-time lows is some form of like quote-unquote support. It can go much, much lower than the current all-time low and just set a new all-time low. So it's funny, we don't even really have, you know, levels. Well, I mean, this thing had a low at, 105, and we got to 103, right? So we've already made a new all-time low. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this thing develops. It's obviously in a very clear downtrend. This becomes a bear flag for the last few years. And you're starting to notice a pattern. They all did a similar thing. It doesn't look identical, but it's the same idea. And I think that also helps to reinforce that point that it doesn't matter what the pattern, quote unquote, looks like, as long as it's kind of serving the same function. And in this case, it's consolidation that has resolved lower. Now we're obviously getting a pretty violent rally. I mean, look at that wick. That's what you're getting because of this really massive swing low, right? And that is similar to what we saw with the euro. So this is on 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's on. So this is on week 4 of its weekly cycle, just like the euro. But then you have something like the Japanese yen, which is trying to eke out a weekly cycle low. It just barely, almost might have one, right? And so because it's just much, much weaker. And so you do have this kind of mixed bag within the basket of Dixie, which is important to know about to kind of understand. And on this one, for the British pound, we're actually trying to make a monthly swing low. That's important to know about. If we can make a move above 1.1738, that will give us a monthly swing low. That will make the month of September a swing low. Now, you could even see a world where like something like the British pound does go on to have a more rally in it. it's about 12% weighting. So even if it does have a rally, we could still see the Dixie kind of squeeze higher because the euro can't keep up. These are things that are important to be aware of, that we're going to be kind of watching regularly on this channel for sure. And in terms of the, similar to the euro, where we were like on day 20, this is probably a similar thing, right? That ICL was also a daily cycle low. So we're here on day 23. So definitely getting in the timing band for a high. If you just kind of look at these are clearly, like, let's just see what's that one. That's probably a little bit longer. That is 19 days. So, now we could be seeing a trend change, right? Like we could be seeing a slightly longer rally or even a much longer rally. We'll certainly kind of watch for that. But the higher time frame signals are certainly bearish. And, I'd say the short term ones are still telling you we may get a cool off just based on how long we've rallied, like on a daily cycle, like on a daily chart, for instance. This weekly cycle does look, who knows? Maybe we have a chance of, that would be a massive move up because the 200-week moving average is up there around $1.30. But we'll have to see, right? We could get a protracted period of weakness, like the ICL that's unfolding for the Dixie. Maybe this is telling, like, if we get a stronger rally here and the euro follows suit, that could be telling us that Dixie is going to get, a bigger decline. And finally, we'll look at the Canadian dollar, and we'll probably just kind of leave it at that. We'll look at the krona and the Swiss franc really quickly, but like the Canadian dollar is the last one that has a weighting that's anything significant. That's a weighting of 9.1%. As I said, the krona and the franc have a weighting combined of 8%. And so with this one, it's not, let's look at the yearly chart, like as with everything else. And this is one where we had a nice big rally, and then this was your swing high here, right? You can see when we went below that low. Now, in this case, we didn't get that downside follow through you get after swing high lows, or excuse me, after swing highs on the yearly candle. We actually got a reversal, but it ended in a lower high, this high lower than this one, which is to say it just ended with another swing high that was lower than the original one, right? And that's a swing high, right? So this, again, not to beat a dead horse, is essentially a bear flag. Now, you had a lot of action within this, and obviously, if you somehow caught this whole big hammer candle like down here, you obviously could have made a ton of money. But in the end, this looks like a bear flag that's spilling over. And in terms of levels, you'd certainly expect we test that area. So down around like the 67, 68 cents to a dollar for the Canadian dollar. This is also called a commodity currency. So that's not a good sign. Look at this big downdraft. Yikes. Not saying that's what we're setting up for, but when you get a swing high, you got to be careful, my friends. So let's just, let's look at the lower time frame really quickly. So Canadian dollar is telling us we may be on week 2 of a weekly cycle. Okay. So that's good to know about, right? So like to recap, week 4 for the euro and the pound. It is maybe week 1 for the Japanese yen, just if it can squeak by. And it's week 2 for the Canadian dollar. And the Canadian dollar has yet to get above the 10-period moving average. It looks like it's certainly, it's certainly trying to make a sprint there. And is this, yeah. So this is a green month as well. That's really important to know about. And also, we made a lower low already. So kind of working on a little false breakdown. So that's interesting. So again, so that's strength. And that tells you this thing might rally for a little bit longer, right? Like that, if this is week 2 of the weekly cycle, even if it's going to be left translated, right? Like you can see this weekly cycle rallied, well, that was like 5 weeks. That was like 6 or 7. So, we could be in for a little rally here. All of that means a mixed picture for Dixie, which means it probably doesn't continue to go up relentlessly the way it has been. We know right now it's moving into a weekly cycle low, but it's really a question of, are we going to have that unrelenting pace slow down? And it does seem like maybe possibly, right? Again, it really is going to hinge on the euro, which is a huge weight. So thank you for watching. I'll continue to stay updated on these currencies. Oh, right. I mentioned we'll just really quickly look at the Swiss franc. And so the krona yearly chart, my God, we're making all-time lows. We don't really need to look at lower time frames after you see this. Like, my God, yikes. Obviously, it could be seeing a massive reversal. Who knows? And this is your Swiss franc. So this is actually in a massive uptrend, except these swing highs are pretty ominous, right? Like, you know, like that. Wow. I mean, you got smoked in this year. Like, I mean, you know, there are plenty of lower time frame signals. So that's 2015 and 2011. But the more important point here is, what do we have? That's right. It's a swing high on the yearly. And you would think we're going to test, you know, maybe that 95 area. So 95 cents to $1 for the Swiss franc, maybe in its future. So that is the lay of the land for the 6 currencies that make up the basket that is the Dixie. We'll be watching that thing like a hawk because it correlates very highly with, or inversely correlated with, risk assets for the most part. So that's all we've got. Thanks for watching.